Welcome to 1315, the podcast that teaches teens to pursue Christ and defend their faith in everyday life. My name is Caleb Eckerd, and I'm the co-founder of the ministry Grounds for Faith. I'm sitting down with some of the brightest minds that follow Christ to answer the hardest questions, talk to them about what they've learned along the way, and find out what encouragements they might have for the next generation of believers. With that being said, why don't you go ahead and grab yourself a cup of coffee, have a sit, and start listening. Alrighty, here we go. It's almost time to get rolling with today's podcast episode. So, I'm going to be calling Hugh Ross just momentarily. So with that being said, I'm super excited for this one. I listened to Hugh Ross at the Apologetics Conference at the National Conference on Christian Apologetics back in October, and so I decided I wanted to have him on for a podcast. So with that being said, Hugh Ross is an astronomer and best-selling author that travels the globe speaking on the compatibility of advancing scientific discoveries with the timeless truths of Christianity. His organization's Reasons to Believe is dedicated to demonstrating via a variety of resources and events that science and biblical faith are allies, not enemies. Y'all are in for a special treat today, so with that being said, let's go ahead and give him a call. Dr. Ross? Hello, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. I can see you.
Awesome.
Very good.
Audience is mostly younger people, young adults, teens, and so I just kind of wanted to give them some insight on what's out in the world, what's out in the universe past what's taught in high school.
Okay.
So to start off, would you like to tell me a little bit about how you came to faith in Jesus? That's one of my first questions. I love asking people. It's cool to get different stories.
It all began when I was 7 years of age. I was born, raised, and educated in Canada. I was not raised in a Christian home. I didn't know any Christians growing up at all. But at age 7, I really got interested in astronomy. In fact, I was reading an average of 5 books on physics and astronomy per week. And from age 7 onwards, I would kind of take a year to focus on a different subdiscipline of astronomy. Age 16, I read intensively on cosmology, the origin and history of the universe. And that's when it became apparent to me the universe was best described by a Big Bang event. And as such, there had to be a beginning. And if there was a beginning, there was a beginner. So starting at age 17, I began to look for that cosmic beginner. And I first searched for that beginner in the writings of Immanuel Kant and René Descartes. I discovered they had some mistaken ideas about space-time and the universe. And that's when I began to look at the different holy books that talk about God, and went through each one of them, putting them in the best possible interpretive light. But for example, I went through the Hindu Vedas or the Buddhist commentaries of the Quran. I found numerous unmistakable scientific and historical errors, and so I put those aside. And then I picked up a Gideon Bible that was given to me in a public school, and began to go through that, and discovered that it had a lot to say about cosmology, and everything it had to say was correct. Even predicting that the universe we live in experiences continual expansion from a space-time beginning. So the Bible struck me not only as being scientifically accurate, but having scientific predictive power, the power to predict future scientific discoveries. And after spending 18 months going through the Bible, looking for a provable error or contradiction, realized I couldn't find any, also discovered that the book had very dramatic predictive power, and that's what persuaded me in age 19 to sign my name in the back of a Gideon Bible, giving my life to Christ. But I really didn't get to know Christians until I came to Caltech to do postdoctoral research. There I met a number of Christians. They helped me to find a church. I had the pleasure of leading my office partner, an atheist from Australia, to faith in Christ. And,
Awesome.
got to see a number of scientists come to faith in Christ. But as well, I was at Caltech. I was challenged by another astronomer who's a Christian to start sharing my faith with non-scientists. And I remember telling Dave, where do you find these non-scientists? Walk off the Caltech campus. I'm sure you'll run into one or two of them. I discovered something profound, that non-scientists are much more receptive to scientific evidences for the Christian faith than scientists are. And so that kind of was a turning point in my life.
Wow. That's incredible. I love that. So in public school, as soon as, we the general, or at least where I live, the general gist of it is you start learning from a very young age about the Big Bang and whatnot. And for a lot of people, I think they kind of view that as, oh, well, that explains the origin of the universe. There's no need for God. Could you comment on your thoughts on that theory, and is that even a valid conclusion for a young mind or any mind to come to?
Well, when I was a young mind, it's like if the universe has a beginning, something had to start it. I wonder what it was that started it. And so looking for that, and it was also a time when physicists were developing the first of the space-time theorems, and they were basically proving that not only does the universe have a beginning, but space and time also has a beginning. And so that means that the creator of the universe must be some causal agent outside of matter, energy, space, and time. And that's a fairly basic definition of God. And so, I was struggling with whether it was a deistic God or a theistic God. But as I looked at the universe, I realized it not only has a beginning, it's fine-tuned to make possible our existence at this epoch in the history of the universe. So it told me that this causal agent must be some kind of personal being. So the universe says a lot about God, and when I picked up the Bible and began to read it, I saw Paul in the book of Romans making that same point, that because of the way God created the universe, it testifies of him and his attributes.
Wow. So I've picked up, and I was at the National Conference on Christian Apologetics this past October, and so I got a copy of your book, In With the Reasons to Believe, kind of sweet packet, and started reading it. And when I picked it up, I was like, oh man, because I've read through Signature in the Cell, and I was like, sometimes these books that are very rooted more scientifically are quite hard to read, and I was concerned about that at first. But the more I read it, I don't know, I just wanted to commend you. It's a very well written, intriguing, engaging book. So I love that aspect of that. So
well, that's thanks to a editorial team here at Reasons to Believe. Their goal is to make sure that the book has credibility at the highest scientific academic level, but also can communicate with lay people who don't have a science background. So we have as many editors working with us as we have scientists.
That's awesome. Well, I love it, and your team did a great job, and
thank you.
I think it's definitely a book that our readers should pick up. So what came as the motivation for that, and even for your most recent update for that?
Well, what you see in Job and Psalms is that the more you learn about nature, the more evidence you'll uncover for the supernatural handiwork of God. And so that's why we at Reasons to Believe keep bringing out new editions of our books. The Creator and the Cosmos, it's now in its 4th edition. But if you look at the 4 separate editions, you see that with each new edition, the scientific evidence for God being the creator of the universe is exponentially greater than it was in the previous edition. And so that demonstrates that biblical principle. The more we learn about the universe, the more evidence we're going to find for for the supernatural handiwork of God in designing it for our benefit. And I think what's kind of new in the fourth edition is that we see fine-tuning to make possible the existence of microbial life, but the fine-tuning evidence goes up dramatically if you put it in the context of what you need to get plants and animals, and goes up even more if you want the equivalent of human beings. But in the fourth edition of The Creator and the Cosmos, and also another book I've written, Improbable Planet, we make the point that the greatest jump in fine-tuning evidence is when you put it in the context of what's necessary about the universe, Earth, and Earth's life to make possible the redemption of billions of human beings from their propensity to commit evil. So it's in the context of redemption that we have the strongest fine-tuning evidence. And actually, if you go back to the Bible, every major creation text in the Bible links the doctrine of creation with the doctrine of redemption. But it's fun for me, scientists, to actually see that in the record of nature.
Yeah. Wow. So, what new specific evidence do you include in this update that kind of would rather reveal or prove of a creator?
Well, a couple of things. I wrote about what are called primordial magnetic fields because there was a lot of speculation going on over the past decade that maybe there are magnetic fields in intergalactic space that would so alter the dynamics of the universe that maybe we're not really stuck with a Big Bang creation event. But what is new is we actually have measurements that tell us that the upper limits on these intergalactic magnetic fields are orders of magnitude too weak to support any of those speculations, which means we really are stuck with a God beyond space and time that created this universe for our benefit. The other thing that excited me was to write about the habitable zones, because the discovery of planets outside of our solar system back in the 1990s, there was this idea that we're going to be finding lots of planets just like the planets in our solar system, and we're going to be finding many planets where there could be conceivable life on those planets. And all the focus has been on what's called the habitable zone. But that's a misnomer. It's really the liquid water habitable zone. What kind of characteristics of the planetary system do you need to make possible the existence of liquid water on the surface of the planet? So you've got NASA saying, follow the water. Because the understanding is if you don't have liquid water, you have no possibility for life. But what I've written in the fourth edition is simply letting lay people realize, that's a mistake, because water is the third most abundant molecule in the universe. The universe is dripping wet. Water's everywhere. But, you can have a pot of water on the stove, and it's not going to make life. You need, life requires a lot more than just liquid water. And what is new in the book is astronomers now recognize, in addition to the liquid water habitable zone, there are 8 other habitable zones. So, for example, you need to be the right distance from the star to get the right amount of ultraviolet radiation. Not too much and not too little. But what they've discovered is, for the vast majority of stars, over 97%, the liquid water habitable zone does not overlap the ultraviolet habitable zone. And if they don't overlap, there's no possibility for life. And for life to really be possible, all 9, and now it's 10, all 10 of the habitable zones must perfectly overlap one another. Now, of all the planets that we discovered, nearly 4,000, there's only one of those 4,000 that exists in even 3 of the 10 known habitable zones. And I'll give you 3 guesses which planet that is. It's also the one planet that exists in all 10 habitable zones. But it's really making the point that our solar system, our galaxy, and our planet Earth has been exquisitely designed, supernaturally designed to make possible our existence.
That's remarkable. And so even in the late 90s, when that theory was the predominant, that there was only really one inhabitable zone, that you really just had to have water, and that was the basics. But now, the more the research and discoveries have taken place, we realize there's more to it. So with that being said, what would you say where could you see the scientific research going in the next 25 years?
Well, I've been on record since the 1980s saying we will find the remains of life on every solar system body if we look hard enough for it. And that's simply because Earth has had such an abundance of light for such a very long period of time that when large meteors strike the Earth, it causes Earth's soil to be exported throughout the solar system, and a single ton of Earth's soil has 100 quadrillion microbes in it. And so that stuff has been deposited everywhere. In fact, some astronomer friends of mine have calculated how much Earth's soil resides on the surface of the moon. And it's a phenomenal amount. There's 20,000 kilograms of Earth soil on every 100 square kilometers of the moon's surface. Moreover, they've determined that most of that material arrived via low-velocity collision events, which means that the microbes, the fossils of those microbes, will still be in pristine form on the moon. Obviously, they're not going to be viable. The moon won't allow them to live. But you're going to be able to find the pristine fossils of Earth's first life in that lunar soil. What excites me is we're never going to find those fossils here on Earth. Earth's early geology has destroyed all those fossils. All we got on the Earth are the isotope signatures of Earth's first life. But we could go to the moon, find that Earth soil, and recover the pristine fossils of Earth's first life and determine who got the origin of life model right. The atheists would say it's only one species, where it's less than a tenth of a micron across, with very simple biochemistry, or is it the Christian theistic worldview, where it's going to be a whole ecology of microbes, where some of those microbes will be more than a micron across, or we're going to have some that are even photosynthetic, with 1,500 plus gene products in it. I got to speak on this at NASA Houston a number of years ago, saying if we go back to the moon with that mission, then we can determine who got the origin of life model right. And last time I checked, 100% of the U.S. taxpayer base was made up of theists and non-theists. Every one of them should be thrilled with NASA settling this big debate about the origin of life. So, although I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese do it first. They seem to be really focused on going to the moon and making these kinds of discoveries.
Wow. So, you think that would kind of settle to some degree the debate. I'm sure they would come up with something else that, obviously that they would kind of disagree on. What would you consider the toughest naturalist objection to the cosmological design?
Well, what you'll see in the fourth edition of the Crater in the Cosmos is that there's been a shift in the critique from atheists about the Christian interpretation of the universe. No longer are they trying to rebut Christianity with physical evidence. They're appealing to what I call non-empirical arguments, basically resting their atheism on things we can't know and discover through scientific research. And that tells me that we've turned a very important philosophical turn here, in the sense that I've always lived my life trying to base my belief on actual physical evidence, what we can know and discover. And so I'm finding it ironic that now atheists who have always challenged us to look at the evidence are actually basing their belief system on something that can't even possibly be discovered. But what gives me optimism is that science is continually pushing back the frontiers of ignorance. And, a lot of my atheist friends say, well, we have no idea what's going on in the quantum gravity era. Therefore, we can speculate that physics is radically different there, so radically different, maybe we don't even need a God or a beginning of the universe. But what I write about in the Creator and the Cosmos is that for the first time, we're coming up with scientific tools that are actually giving us insight into what's happening in the quantum gravity era. And the bottom line is it's not good news for the atheists. Mm-hmm. It's basically making the point, the more we learn about the universe, the stronger the evidence becomes. But I'm also alerting believers here, you'll never be able to come up with absolute proof for God's existence. Mm-hmm. There will always be realms of things we can't test and measure. And you can speculate in those regions of ignorance. However, it's not an evidence-based belief system. And, we're never going to be able to overcome that. In fact, I use the analogy that even though I've been married to my wife for 40 years, I still lack absolute proof that she exists. I mean, there's a possibility I've been deceived all these years by a very sophisticated three-dimensional hologram. However, I've been doing observations and experiments on my wife for the past 40 years, and every year that goes by, the physical evidence gets stronger and stronger. So I've got what I would call practical proof of her existence, but it's not absolute proof. And what I share with my atheist friends, if I can provide you with stronger scientific evidence that God exists than that I exist, don't you think that's good enough for you to really look at what God's demands on your life are and really consider developing a relationship? I mean, that's what I did. I chose to develop a relationship with my wife, even though I lacked absolute proof that she exists. And I benefited from making that decision. Well, likewise, I think that's also true that people say, well, I can't believe in God until I get absolute proof. Well, that's never going to happen. But you know what? You're being inconsistent. You do lots of things in your life without absolute proof. Let's look at the practical evidence. And really, we need to base our beliefs on the trend line. Does the evidence get stronger and stronger for a particular proposition?
So I have, as I've gotten older, I have, kind of through middle school, you have that mindset, well, I know everything. I know it all. I've got it covered. But then the older you kind of get, I've kind of learned, I know enough now to know that I don't know that much. Is that something you've seen continue even through your research, through your PhD, and far beyond that?
Well, definitely, and I think that's what motivates me as a scientist. The universe is such that no matter how much we study it, we're never going to exhaust everything there is to learn there. Moreover, what we discover is really exciting stuff. And I think that's been a barrier for some of my science peers, is that science can be so much fun, and the thrill of making discoveries that have monumental importance is such a thrill that it can really divert you from the most important issues of life. I mean, several of the atheist scientists I've publicly debated basically confessed to me after the debate that their science is like a captivating video game. It's so thrilling and exciting, it distracts them from dealing with the really critical issues of life. It can be addictive. But I think one of the things that does make it addictive is that we can't plumb the depths of it. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody from studying science. I think it's a thrill, but just realize there's more to life than just simply learning about the record of nature. You really want to discover who's responsible for this amazing natural world that we're investigating.
Absolutely. So with, I've been absolutely informed and so entertained, and have really enjoyed reading The Creator and the Cosmos, but, I already am a Christian. I follow God. I believe there's outstanding evidence to do so, but what would you say to the unbeliever? Is this really a book for them to read?
Well, it is a book for them to read in the sense that if they want to really see what is the evidence, the hard scientific evidence for the God of the Bible, this is the book to get. Because the thing about astronomy is we're looking at the past. In fact, I tell my wife, because I'm an astronomer, I'm completely ignorant of the present. All of our data comes from the past because of the velocity of light. But it's such today that we have the telescope power that we can measure 100% of the history of the universe. Well, not exactly 100%, but it's 99.9999 with 35 more nines percent of the history of the universe. And that explains why in astronomy we get the most compelling, rigorous, direct scientific evidences for the God of the Bible, because we can actually go back in time and watch the universe being created. We actually got measurements that tell us the state of the universe when it was 100 billionth of a trillionth of a second old. And it's direct evidence. You're not inferring the past, you're directly observing the past. However, I've found that a number of my unbelieving friends prefer the book I wrote, Why the Universe is the Way It Is, because what I do in that book is explain how the laws of physics and the space-time dimensions were designed by God to be tools to permanently eradicate evil. And that's really the only argument philosophically for atheism, is they say, well, if there's an all-powerful God that's all-loving, why would there be evil in the world? If such a God existed, he would get rid of evil. Well, the truth is, he is getting rid of evil, but he's doing it through the way he designed the universe. And so I make the point in why the universe is the way it is. Look at gravity, look at electromagnetism, thermodynamics, the space-time dimensions, the age of the universe, the extent of the universe. It's not only fine-tuned for our existence, it's fine-tuned to be tools to permanently eliminate evil. And what the Bible tells us is that when evil is eradicated through the physics of the universe and God's intervention, then God's going to replace this universe with a brand new creation. And I actually address that in The Creator and the Cosmos, how there are now models of the universe that predict that there will be an end to the universe. But the Bible tells us when that happens, God's going to replace it with a different realm, with different physics. Why different physics? Because in a new creation, there will be no possibility for evil. So no longer do we need to be constrained by gravity and thermodynamics and electromagnetism.
Awesome. Well, so at the end of the day, what's your heart behind The Creator and the Cosmos? What's your goal for the reader?
Well, of all the books that I've written, and I've written 18 now, this is the book that has brought more people to faith in Jesus Christ than any other book I've written. And I think that's what really gives me fulfillment, is just seeing people who don't have any Christian background, no knowledge of the Bible, no Christian friends. They pick up the book, they read it, and it transforms their life. So, and that's why I'm committed to keep bringing out new editions of the book.
Wow. Well, do you have any last words of wisdom for a younger generation of believers as they're working through school and working through growing up in life?
Yeah, I do. I mean, when you read the Bible, it says, study nature. So I tell everybody, from a biblical perspective, science is not an option, it's a command. Study nature. It'll tell you about God, it'll tell you about a lot of other things, and it's fun. Mm-hmm. The other command you see in the Bible is study Scripture. And so, don't leave theology up to your pastor. We're all commanded to be theologians. We're all commanded to be scientists. And it's way too much fun to avoid it. You really want to get involved. But the key is, God gave us two books, and we need to really find ways to bring the two books together. That's what we're committed to do at Reasons to Believe, is to show you how to bring these two books, the book of nature, the book of Scripture, together in such a way that you really can develop a fulfilling relationship with the one that created the universe. Hey, and for what it's worth, we're giving away a free chapter of The Creator and the Cosmos, the chapter where I address Stephen Hawking and how the irony was he came up with some of the most phenomenal evidences for the God of the Bible, but wouldn't accept it himself. Mm-hmm. We're giving that chapter away for free, reasons.org/Ross. And hopefully that'll want you to get the rest of the chapters as well.
All right. So if the viewer or listeners want to know more about kind of you, your organization, and what you do, where could they check you out and find more out?
Well, it's reasons.org, and if they go to reasons.org/Ross, we're giving away 6 chapters of 6 different books I've written.
Awesome. Thank you again for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and thank you for all you're doing. I love it, and I look forward to hopefully getting to chat with you again soon, maybe seeing you and attending a few debates and conferences as well with that. So,
well, it'll be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thanks. All right, take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Hugh Ross with Reasons to Believe. So if you want to find out more about Hugh Ross and his work, go check out reasons.org. There's a lot of great resources on there, and I desperately urge y'all to go check out those chapters that he was talking about that are available on reasons.org/Ross. They're really great. There's going to be a lot of awesome resources in there, and I'm telling you, please, please, please go read The Creator and the Cosmos. It is probably one of the most complex books I've read, in the sense that there's a lot of scientific theory and stuff that is being discussed, but Hugh Ross was not lying when he says his team worked tirelessly on creating this book in a way that everyone could read. It is so entertaining, and I did not think that was going to be the case. So I just had to, I had to confess that to him. I was like, I didn't really pick it up right away, because I was like, I know it's going to be super complex, and I didn't know if I was really wanting that in a book at the moment. Because really deep scientific books can be hard and challenging to read. But boy, I tell you, this one is probably the easiest one I have ever read, and it is incredible for the amount of information that is in there. So, with that being said, going ahead and backflip into that subscribe button to the podcast. That way you never miss out on a single episode. It would be a shame if you missed out on an awesome episode like this one with Dr. Hugh Ross from reasonstobelieve.org and Reasons to Believe. Also, going ahead and hop over to groundsforfaith.com. That's grounds, the number 4, faith.com, and you can check out some of our resources there. We got a lot of great resources. If you love what we're doing, please consider donating and giving to the podcast. It goes a long way, and we would love to see some support. That way we can continue to do what we do, and that way I can channel and focus all my time, my full time into this, and I don't have to worry about doing other things. Thanks so much, and I hope that all of y'all will join us next week with a very special guest. Y'all just have to stay tuned so you can figure out who that is. Have a blessed one, y'all.